Shakespeare himself provided over 1,000 words and phrases. So many of the words that you use today, they have their roots in Shakespeare. We have nothing about the prior to that. He's taking historical elements, he's taking stories that were all throughout Europe, and he's combining them into these tales that have really endured. It's huge. He defined modern English.
He provides us with a lens to view the world that not everybody does. We can see the world in a different light, and we can better see the truths of the world, of humanity, in a different light. And he brings us into a reality that doesn't necessarily exist here, but it existed back then, and not even back then, it existed in his mind, and that was enough to portray truth. And I think that's really beautiful.
Well, I think there are two answers to that question. The first would be that Shakespeare is so much fun, and there's no other, well, not really many other authors that you get to study where you can't just sit and read him like you would read any other author, but you have to act him out. You have to get up and perform him. So there's a unique opportunity with Shakespeare that it can be a lot of fun because it's very engaging. But then also, we study so much Shakespeare here at John Paul because in all of the literature that we study, we're looking for what's lasting.
Shakespeare teaches us so much about humanity and who we are as human beings. Our bioethics and our religion curricula, and there are so many good Shakespearean plays that align so beautifully with the two content areas that our main curriculum is so much richer if we feed into both those two content areas.
We study Shakespeare because the language that we speak is his. He also created really memorable and important stories and characters and interpersonal dynamics that have stood the test of time.
Because we can learn so much about his use of the English language, and for that reason we study Shakespeare, whether it's American English or British English classes. Shakespeare is that important, we have to study him every year.
I think part of the reason is because Shakespeare is so crucial to the English language, which has really impacted the history of England and then by extension the history of our own country. You could say that the U.S., while we do bring in many different cultures and elements, we are at our foundation still very much an English colony or a daughter of England. And so I think there's a sense, because Shakespeare is so crucial to English culture, it's by extension just as crucial to American culture, and I think that's something that in our desire to form students at John Paul the Great in a holistic way, exposing them to the great cultures of the world, to Western civilization, you can't do that unless you make Shakespeare something integral.
I think there are three reasons why we study and perform so much of William Shakespeare's masterpieces here at St. John Paul the Great. First of all, Shakespeare is the poet of human nature. Throughout his works, he really shows us pictures of what it means to be a human being in all our facets, our virtues, our vices, and everything in between.
And then we're also a school that's focused on helping you guys find and understand the truth. And though it's often difficult for high school students to believe it, Shakespeare is actually speaking a lot about the truth in life.
It's the fact that it's all one guy writing in different genres with different themes, so it makes it easier to study English. Not to mention that his plays were very creative and just plain good.
All these different themes that are present in Shakespeare's work, you never know who's going to be in it. It really depends on when and where.
You're going to need great courage, and then you're going to remember that Henry V had great courage. Or you're going to be really frustrated with your family, and then you're going to remember that King Lear was really frustrated with his family.
Just become better people. There's Portia in The Merchant of Venice, who challenges us to think about the quality of mercy and how it's for everybody, for instance. When you read that speech, you think more about how we do need to be more forgiving. And mercy is indeed for everybody, even for Shylock, who doesn't seem like he deserves it, but yes, he does. We all do. Or a Prospero in The Tempest, someone who has, you can certainly understand why he holds a grudge, but he forgives.
I think when students first start to read Shakespeare, they may be discouraged by how hard it is to read and understand. But after time with the text and reading it, they can see that they can do it, they can read it, they can understand it. And I think that's an important achievement. If Shakespeare has lasted 400 years, it will probably last another 400.
Helping them to think more deeply about things, learning how to seek out beauty in something, symbolism, deeper meanings.
I think it opens their horizons, it opens their minds to think about different things that one day, with Shakespeare, he I think that for me as a history teacher, it's one thing for me to teach history out of a book when we kind of just read somebody else's summary of the story. When you have Shakespeare writing about these historical moments, whether it's Julius Caesar or Richard III or Henry V, it helps bring these historical figures to life.
I think it's going to give them a broader understanding, not just of language, it certainly will give them that, of what the English language is capable of. English is more than just the version that we use in our texts, in our ordinary conversations in life. It's a much richer treasure trove of language, and Shakespeare helps us see that.
I think they'll recognize why we did it and actually grow to appreciate him and realize that it wasn't just some arbitrary thing that we were throwing at you, and that there is something to relate to in Shakespeare. I know when you're reading him, the plots are so crazy and everything that's going on, it's like there's no way this is real. But I think one day they'll come to realize that in smaller ways there is something relatable there.
Teach moral values, yeah, absolutely. Shakespeare teaches, bravery. Good people do brave things and are praised and loved and rewarded for it. Bad people do awful things and are punished for it.
Absolutely. Just like the two examples I pointed out, forgiveness, mercy, and you've read Julius Caesar this year. I'm sure that you've picked up on a couple of moral values there.
Well, I think Shakespeare teaches moral values, but in some ways it's through what not to do. I mean, when you look at all of his tragedies, and so many of them end with so many characters being killed, I'm sure there could be a lot of debate there about the moral lessons being learned, but we can learn the lessons through the negative, through the opposite of moral virtue. We can learn more about what it means to be virtuous.
Yes, he has just a sense of right and wrong in his stories. Not all the time. I mean, sometimes he'll do things where you're like, well, we wouldn't be okay with that today. But in general, he has a strong sense of just the basic morals of humanity.
The way that Shakespeare teaches his morals is very effective because we find in characters that are good, they're very compelling, they're very inspiring. And in characters that are bad, either they regret their actions so much that we feel their pain and we wouldn't want to imitate their mistakes. But then even for characters who never repent, there's even a tragedy that we're aware of in that.
Oh, absolutely. With Shakespeare, you always, whether it's a tragedy and you see something in the flaw of a person, that you way you will feel sorry for this person, but you also know why they did what they did wrong, and it teaches that message of what to avoid, because you could turn out into the same fate as this person. But also in the historical plays, you see the accomplishments of many of these great figures, but also their weaknesses, their faults are brought out. And I think it is something for the reader to consider. If I want to be successful, if I want to be happy, if I want to be good, I should avoid certain activities or certain actions and do others.
Absolutely. I think Shakespeare, in many of his plays, especially in his comedies, in freshman year we read A Midsummer Night's Dream, and the sophomore year we read The Tempest. In both of those comedies, you see virtue extolled. You see characters growing in virtue. You see a great celebration of marriage as the central social institution. You see, arguably, even again, that religious and even Catholic influence. And even in the tragedies where we get sadder stories, obviously, we get a lot of death, a lot of destruction. That happens because of failure to live by the virtue.
Yes, Shakespeare teaches moral values. I agree.
I participated in some Shakespeare monologue competitions and singing competitions when I was in high school, and I just had a really wonderful and really memorable drama coach who was just a really, really remarkable woman. And she taught me so many things about acting and about being human, and we did it through Shakespeare, learned how to act and learned how to be human. And I still know some of the Shakespeare that I learned in high school, which I treasure that I've had it for so long. But I had to memorize a monologue from The Merchant of Venice, and I thought, oh, this is really nice. It was the Quality of Mercy speech, Portia's famous courtroom speech. And I thought, oh, this is really nice. And then the next year, I actually read the whole play, and I saw that monologue in context, and I thought, wow, this is sparkling language. It's just bright and beautiful and true and funny and tragic. And I was hooked, and I've been reading Shakespeare ever since.
So my first memory was I was a freshman in high school, and I went to an all-girls high school, and everybody read the same Shakespeare play at the same time. So that would be like in October, the whole school would be reading the same book. And at the time I thought, wow, this is really cool. That means that seniors and sophomores and juniors, we could all talk to each other. We didn't, of course. But I thought it was a cool idea anyhow. And we read The Taming of the Shrew. But I thought that was the coolest idea. And sadly, in my freshman English class, I answered a lot of questions. We did not discuss the book. And I remember having a very flat experience. And it was a shame because I was in an all-girls school. And that play is very much about men's and women's roles. So what a lost opportunity. And so Shakespeare really didn't become cool and interesting to me until junior year, when I had a much cooler class with this really great sister who brought it alive as we talked about Macbeth and actually had discussions, and we acted things out, and all of a sudden Shakespeare started to become much more interesting, and we actually talked about what it meant to be Lady Macbeth and a woman, and it became more relevant to me.
I look back fondly at our school's production of Romeo and Juliet. That was a great show and a great group to be with to work on Shakespeare. But also at this school, our very first show that the drama club ever did was A Midsummer Night's Dream. And that'll always be special, the first show that the JP Drama Club did.
My earliest memories of Shakespeare were when I was 8 years old. We don't have grade schools in England, so I was 8 years old, and I remember Midsummer Night's Dream and Romeo and Juliet, and there were many others.
Has broadened my sense of his work. It's made me fall in love with performing his work. I've fallen in love with the richness of his language. I can't imagine my life without the works of William Shakespeare. Good one. In school, it will be my freshman year of high school. Okay, going way back in the way back machine, this would have been somewhere in the academic year of 1978-79. I was a freshman at St. Joseph's High School in South Bend, Indiana, and my freshman English teacher, Mrs. Seberg, showed us, we were reading Romeo and Juliet in class, just as we read in the freshman year of Julius Caesar. But I remember she showed us Franco Zeffirelli's film version of Romeo and Juliet, and I think that's when I began to like Shakespeare. As I said, I wasn't put off by Shakespeare. I wasn't scared by him. I didn't understand everything. A long way from that, still am, but I saw it in performance, and it just I was enthralled by it.